It's Adam here for PC Monitors, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the OSD on-screen display menu system of the ViewSonic VP2468. The OSD is controlled by pressable buttons which are found on the rear of the monitor towards the right side if you're looking at it from the front. I'll see if I can show you them. You can also see a power LED at the bottom there, which has a little blue illuminated power symbol, so there isn't anything distracting on the front of the monitor or anything like that. Not sure how well these buttons will come out on the video, but basically there are 5 buttons plus the power button on the back there. If you press one of the buttons other than the power button, it brings up a quick menu. It shows you button labels and another set of button labels which correspond to the different buttons. The first button there allows you to change the preset color mode. These are explored in the review. Various color space emulation presets. There are also Cal 1, Cal 2 and Cal 3, which allow you to access the hardware calibration feature of the monitor if you've got a compatible X-Rite colorimeter. Second button allows you to quickly adjust the contrast and brightness of the screen. Third button allows you to quickly change the input used by the monitor, which is useful if you've got multiple things connected to it. And then there's the main menu. And there are quite a lot of options in the main menu, so I'll go through it as best I can without taking too long. So the first bit of the menu, Input Select, fairly self-explanatory. There's just another way of selecting the input used by the monitor. Audio Adjust, which adjusts the volume of the integrated speakers or anything connected to the 3.5mm headphone jack, and allows you to mute the speakers or the audio as well. There's View Mode, and these are another set of presets separate to the color modes. It's a bit confusing. This monitor actually has several different sets of presets, and they're all different things. So game modes, there are various different gaming presets, and I can't actually remember if I did mention these in the review or if I said I was going to go through them in the video, but to be honest, they're not bad, especially FPS 1 and 2, but they don't really achieve anything that you can't achieve with manual adjustments in the custom preset, which is the one I prefer using. So, you can have a play with these if you want. I mean, this one makes everything look really washed out and weird. I mean, I don't know if that's an advantage in a MOBA game or not. I don't really play them. I can't imagine it would be. It just makes things look a bit weird, but they're there if you want to use them anyway. Movie, again, makes things look weird. Web, text, Mac. And this brings another option. You can adjust ultra clear, which I'll go on to in a little bit. Photographer presets, and there are 4 different photographer presets that you can use. There's photo, and this has various different settings related to that, which you can adjust. Advanced gamma allows you to change the gamma handling of the monitor. So there are various different settings you can use there. Advanced sharpness, which is a sharpness filter. You can make it sharper or less sharp, 50 being the default value and, in my opinion, optimal. True tone, which basically lowering this will create a warmer look to the image, and if you want a cooler look to the image, you can increase this. Ultra clear, that's set to 5 by default, but it actually gives you an overly sharp look to the image, which I don't find very appealing at all. It's not very natural looking, it's not accurate. If you turn that off completely, things look as they should. Or you can just have it a slightly weaker version of this sharpness filter if you prefer, and that might be quite useful for some sorts of photography or photo editing. landscape, which is just an alternative mode. This has the same sets of settings there though. Slightly different gamma and colour setup on this one. Portrait. This has a number of different settings, some which aren't available in other modes. One of them being skin tone. And what this does is allows you to adjust basically the reds, the tone of mainly the reds and other skin tone colours. I mean, it does affect other shades as well, but it mainly focuses on the reds, so you can probably see that leaf in the middle of the screen there changing in tone as I adjust that setting. Monochrome. Actually, I'll cut black stabilization. That's available on some other presets as well, so I'll come on to that in a little bit. Monochrome, which makes everything black and white, or monochrome. And that again has a sharpness filter that you can adjust if you want to fine-tune things there. There's a custom setting, which is the one I prefer. It gives you the most natural look to the image and gives you some decent options, including, importantly, response time. By default that is set to standard, and advanced is, as explored in the review, is certainly better, and ultra fast is actually decent on this monitor as well. So you only can actually access this in the custom view mode preset. So there are certain other options, such as in color adjust, that you can't adjust whilst also having the view mode set to custom. So do bear that in mind. It's something I mentioned in the review. It's a bit of an oversight from ViewSonic in my view, but it is what it is. There's also recall, which allows you to change everything on these menus to the factory default. So black stabilization, which I promised I'd talk about. It's basically like BenQ's black equalizer. It selectively enhances the gamma and creates enhanced detail in dark areas. So I'll open up the Lagon website to show you this with the black level test, because that's quite a good way of demonstrating it. So it's a bit light in this room, so this might not be come out so well, but if you decrease this from the default of 5, so 5 is everything looking more or less how it should look. If you decrease this, then those near black shades become darker, and they basically just blend into black. If you increase it above 5, those dark shades become lighter than they should, but that also means that if you've got sort of details in dark areas in your game or your movie or your photographs or whatever it is, you can just see those little details a bit better if you need to. It's Advanced DCR, which is a dynamic contrast ratio mode, dynamic contrast mode, which is explored in the review. You can set that to various different levels. Response time, which I've just gone through before, and recall, which I went through before as well. And there's a color adjust menu. So if you do adjust some of these, you can adjust the contrast and brightness in any of the presets, but if you go to the color temperature, if you adjust the color temperature, or if you so that you can set it to bluish, cool, native or warm. You can also change the colour format. Sorry, this is a bit confusing because I'm trying to explain how they all interrelate. I've even forgotten myself which you can and can't adjust. Basically, you can't... Yeah, this advanced mode thing at the end allows you to change, fine-tune the red, green and blue colour channels, both gain and offset. So gain is like the usual RGB controls you'd have on a monitor. Offset allows you to fine-tune it in a different way. There are hue settings and saturation settings for red, green, blue, but also cyan, magenta and yellow. If you wanted to fine-tune all of that, adjust the white point or whatever using this, you can't actually do that and also set it to the custom view mode. Therefore you can't actually change the response time setting to advanced whilst also adjusting the white point in this way, so just bear that in mind. So coming back to some of the other settings, colour format, so there's RGB, YUV, various different ones. If you're not sure what they are, just leave it on auto and hopefully it'll sort it out for you. Most PC users will be focusing on RGB full range. The various gamma settings, 1.8, 2.0, 2.2, 2.4, 2.6 and off. A bit confusing, off is actually very similar to 2.2, slightly different, but 2.2 is the default and that's the one most users will be aiming for anyway. Various preset colour modes, so that's the same thing that I showed you before when you press the first button on the monitor on its own. Colour calibration settings, and these are again to do with the hardware calibration functionality of the monitor, which requires a compatible X-Rite colorimeter, such as the i1 Display Pro. And then you use the ViewSonic software that you can download for free, and then you can calibrate the monitor directly rather than calibrating the GPU on what's called a software level. It allows you to change various other aspects of the image, and you can see I've been messing around with the colour temperature and all those settings, and now it's just turned the view mode off. You can, however, adjust anything on the manual image adjust whilst also using one of the view modes, such as the custom view mode settings. Sharpness. Again, it's a sharpness filter setting. You should really leave that on 50 unless you like to fine-tune that kind of thing. Aspect ratio settings. So there's a 1:1 pixel mapping mode, 4:3, and full screen. And they really apply to non-native resolutions and how you want the monitor to display them. There's an Overscan feature, which is really just a compatibility feature for some older games consoles and stuff. Most modern games consoles, PCs and stuff, just leave that off, there's no need to use it. Low input lag mode, which I explore in the review, just leave this off. All it does is decrease the response times. It makes the pixel responses a lot faster. In a bad way, that is to say that it introduces obvious inverse ghosting. The response time settings are quite nicely tuned without low input lag on. It also has no effect on the signal delay, which is very low on this monitor with this off or on, so there's actually no reason to use this. It's really just there because I guess some people would expect it to be there. Blue light filter as well, the low blue light mode, and you can adjust this between 0, which means it's disabled, and 100 in increments of 1, and as you increase this, it decreases the blue channel, it makes the image look warmer, it decreases the amount of blue light that the monitor emits, and that's good for relaxing viewing in the evening or just before bed, when you should be cutting out this stimulating blue light as much as possible. And you can, as I said, adjust these settings when you've got the view mode set to custom or whatever else you're using. So in other words, you can make the image look warmer if you wish to, even though you can't manually adjust the red, green and blue colour channels with the custom view mode. There's also a uniformity setting. It's greyed out because I'm using the custom mode. It's something that you can access in certain presets, so if I just switch to the sRGB preset, it's actually enabled by default with this preset. I think I was testing with it off more recently, so it's off there. But this is a uniformity compensation mode which evens out the luminance and the colour temperature on the screen so it's more consistent at various points. It does that at huge expense of contrast though, that's explored in the review as well. Setup menu, various different options that you can change on the OSD itself, such as the language it's displayed in, whether it gives you a little notice on the screen to remind you when you're using a non-native resolution that it isn't optimal, a little information section that shows you the refresh rate, resolution, pixel clock, various other things, a model number which ViewSonic uses to identify the monitor, a serial number, and ViewSonic's website. You can change the timeout period of the OSD, so the time in seconds between 5 and 60 seconds, various different settings you can use there. I didn't really explain what that means, but I think most people can probably work it out. But it's basically how long the OSD remains on the screen after the last button press before it automatically disappears. You can of course make it disappear by just pressing that X a few times if you prefer. OSD background, so you can put a transparency effect into the OSD if you want. The pivot options, so if you're pivoting the monitor, you want it in portrait mode, for example, you can change the OSD orientation so you're not having to move your head around in a weird way to read the OSD when you've got the monitor in that orientation. You can enable or disable the power indicator, which, as I mentioned before, is at the back of the monitor. You can set it so that when the monitor loses signal from the computer, it'll automatically go on to standby, which is what this auto power off feature means. You can set the monitor to automatically go on standby, or sleep as they call it here, after a certain amount of time. I haven't tested this feature, but I believe it will probably give you a message on the screen, and if you had set this to go to sleep but then decide actually no, I want to use the monitor, you just have to press one of the buttons here and it won't go to sleep. That's usually how it works. Eco mode just basically adjusts the brightness to various preset levels, and it's not available in certain presets. So I'll just change this image preset and see if that... Yeah, now I can adjust the eco mode. Standard, optimize, or conserve. So basically standard being high brightness, optimize being a bit dimmer, and conserve being dimmer again. And you can of course manually adjust the brightness on the monitor, which has the same effect. DisplayPort 1.2, you can enable or disable that. It's just a compatibility feature. This monitor doesn't really require DisplayPort 1.2 other than for the MST multi-stream transport daisy chaining possibilities, if you want to do that with the monitor. DDC/CI, plug and play functionality of the monitor allows you to use certain software to control the monitor. So again, that's a compatibility thing, just leave it on. Most modern systems use that just fine. There's something which I haven't actually been able to work out. Save as. What this should do is allow you to change all of the settings you want and then save it as user 1, user 2 or user 3. But I haven't found a way to actually recall these or to select them. So I know there's a recall option here, but that seems to just wipe your saved preset sets. But there's no option that I can see anywhere in the OSD to actually activate one of these, and it isn't Cal 1, Cal 2 or Cal 3, that's a separate thing. So you know, if anyone does know how to use these, feel free to comment in the video. And there's a setting to reset everything to the factory defaults as well. And I'm just going to change back to my custom setting just to show you one last little feature of the OSD. You can see there's a little eco bar, and this is kind of the reverse of similar bars that you'll see on some monitors. I should also mention that there's a quick way of looking at that information section that was available elsewhere on the OSD. So if you just press that button, it goes to there. But anyway, this eco bar, on most monitors, when that's higher, it means the brightness is higher, the monitor's using more energy. But on this monitor, the higher the eco bar is, the less energy it's using, so the dimmer it is generally, and the less energy is being used. So if I adjust the brightness, you should see that move. So I'm increasing the brightness now. You can see that that bar actually goes down rather than up. So it's a little bit confusing, but if you like that kind of thing, you basically want that bar to be as high up as possible. But obviously you should really just be using a comfortable brightness, whatever's comfortable for you. Don't pay too much attention to that bar. And there's also a little thing that just says what resolution and refresh rate's being used by the monitor currently. So there you have it. That was the OSD on-screen display menu system of the ViewSonic VP2468. Be sure to check out the full review on PCmonitors.info.